salamat kay Miss Yelitza. Nais po natin tawagin ang marami tayong nakahanay na speeches, no? We have lots of speeches, cultural presentations, and tribute. Unahin natin na tawagin si kasamang Professor Roland Simbulan ng UP Manila.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I am honored to give this tribute to Fidel and the Cuban people. I take great pleasure in acknowledging the exemplary inspiration that a small country in the Caribbean, Cuba, under the leadership of Comandante Fidel Castro and the Communist Party of Cuba, has given countries like the Philippines. Despite its small size, Cuba has played a major role in world politics. Since the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro in 1959, social reformers and revolutionaries throughout Latin America, Asia, and Africa have looked up to the Cuban Revolution as an example. Cuba has played a prominent role in the United Nations and the movement of non-aligned nations. When Cuba speaks in international fora, in addition to representing its own country, it speaks on behalf of the poverty-stricken peoples in the colonial and the semi-colonial world. Cuba's impact is felt in industrialized capitalist countries as well. The specter of the Cuban Revolution, the first socialist revolution in the Americas, has haunted defenders of capitalism in the United States. Since the revolution came to power in 1959, the United States government has used every means at its disposal to isolate, weaken, and overturn the achievements of the Cuban Revolution and its people through economic blockades, the military invasion at the Bay of Pigs in 1961, the threat of nuclear annihilation during the 1962 missile crisis, spy flights, assassination attempts against Fidel and Cuba's leaders, the introduction of diseases to destroy Cuban crops and livestock, terrorism, such as the terrorist attack against a Cuban airline, and above all, an unrelenting propaganda campaign to turn the people of the world against Cuba. In 1980, then U.S. President Jimmy Carter candidly stated why the U.S. government has been afraid of Cuba, which then had a population of only 10 million people. Then President Carter said, and I quote, "The real threat of Cuba is that they offer a model to be emulated by peoples who are dissatisfied with their lot or who are struggling to change things for the better." End of quote. The United States and other Western powers have connived to destroy the social changes brought about by the Cuban Revolution. Its ability to survive that onslaught of the Yankee superpower that is the center of global capitalism just 90 miles north of this island nation, is a testimony of the spirit of its leaders and people. Their tireless creativity and strength in grappling with the problems of guiding the economic development of a once backward country besieged and attacked by US imperialism. Cuba has even, in fact, become a superstar in global sports. Poetry and literature on Cuba have flourished precisely because of the inadequacies of the narrative in capturing the texture of the human experience, such as the spirit of the Cuban working people who endured Yankee invasions and embargoes, their anguish and sufferings, their immense sacrifices to defend and shape their social revolution, their aspirations, and their joys. But the sheer scope of the revolutionary process that was led by Fidel in Cuba still surpasses literary imagination. Before the revolution, was a backward country with a one-crop economy, and most of its people lived in abject poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, and disease. Since then, the country has made advances, especially in education, healthcare, and improving the quality of life, especially of its workers, peasants, and urban poor. Illiteracy, which once afflicted a third of its population before its revolution, has long been eliminated, and free and universal public education instituted. In the early 80s, I was privileged to visit Cuba as a member of what they call the Venceremos Brigade. This was the time that I was taking up my graduate studies in the United States. The Cuban healthcare system, by far even besting the United States and other industrialized countries, is also free. Since the revolution, life expectancy, according to the United States, United Nations figures itself, has risen from under 55 years to over 74 years. In Cuba's example, small countries will always look for inspiration. Inspiration in struggle, inspiration in tenacity, inspiration in the spirit of sacrifice, and inspiration in the spirit of internationalism, which is the political framework of Cuba's foreign policy. That is, in the words of Fidel Castro, and I quote, the subordination of Cuban positions to the international needs of the struggle for socialism and for the national liberation of the people. End of quote. This position puts priority on supporting struggles for social justice throughout the world. Cuba's revolutionary society, led by Fidel, has sustained an inspiration to peoples and nations who want to free their countries from poverty, from illiteracy, and from disease. The passion of its leaders and people, in their staunch spirit of defying the Goliath of Yankee imperialism in both words and deeds, have become a continuous source of inspiration to national liberation movements and small nations. This is why, to this day, the United States has tried to impose immeasurable suffering on the Cuban people, whose fate arms and money cannot control, they cannot control or buy. Mere words cannot really do justice to the Cuban experience and revolutionary process. But we hope they will prevail. It is no understatement to say that many revolutionaries and social reformers in the Philippines have been strengthened and enormously by their example, comradeship, and commitment to socialist economic development. For despite the economic embargo that the United States has long imposed for so long on its fragile economy and the complex problems that it has had to confront, this revolutionary society has improved the lives of its peoples and today has one of the best community-based healthcare programs in the world, which I am sure our Department of Health can learn much from. Maybe all our economic managers in the Duterte cabinet, including their neoliberal disciples and students in the UP School of Economics, should be made to study the Cuban economic model. Finally, we should uphold Cuba because of what it has become. Is a mirror here of our own past and present to the human condition that we still endure under the Yankee Empire. Because of that, Cuba is a mirror perhaps to our future. Venceremos and mabuhay!
Venceremos, mabuhay! Maraming salamat kasamang Professor Roland Simbulan. Maaari po lamang we want to secure the copies of your speeches and documents na we want to have the message from the Embassy of Venezuela.